Welcome, friends. This is Under the Arc Sports. I'm Eric,
And I'm David.
and today we're here to preview Mizzou's conference opener against Kentucky Wildcats. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Facebook and Instagram. Now, David, real quick, looking at Missouri after one game, what do you think about the Tigers?
Um, I'm still going back and forth on this. I know we talked earlier about this, but I think Mizzou has a real solid foundation they can build on. They had a lot of young guys in the game, so obviously I'm going to be looking for improvement in the next couple of games. I think the defensive scheme will eventually work. I think a lot of people underestimate how good Central Michigan's offensive line was. I think 3 or 4 of the guys are actually being scouted by the NFL, so don't count that factor out as we continue on in the rest of the season. I don't know. It's a work in progress. I mean, we knew that going in. There's a lot of young players, a lot of developing still, a whole new defense. I figured the Tigers are pretty much right where I expected them to be honest.
Yeah, you mentioned like a lot of guys playing. More than half the roster played on offense or defense on Saturday. Plus counting guys on special teams, we're probably talking close to 50 out of 85 scholarship guys saw the field. So a lot of guys getting looks. I think you're going to see that number cut down some this week against Kentucky. And it's part of the process of building your rotation and your depth, just figuring out who can play, really. Now, looking at Kentucky, the numbers they looked great. They played Louisiana Monroe, who is horrendous. They beat them 45-10. And when I say horrendous for Louisiana Monroe, we're talking worse than Kansas. Bad. That means something. I think everyone's curious to see, can Will Levis replicate his performance against a legitimate defense?
Well, and he may not have been pressured at all in that game. And he threw 18 for 26, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So, he still had some misses back there, and some of that may have been the defense actually making a play or two here and there too. I am really curious to see how Mizzou's new scheme matches up. It's a whole different Kentucky team now that they actually have a quarterback who can throw the ball.
Yeah. You said 18 to 26 for 367 yards and 4 touchdowns, which that'll get your attention no matter who it's against. I did notice one major thing that contrasted in a big way from Mizzou. Mizzou, they started off clean, no turnovers, just 4 penalties. Kentucky turned the ball over 3 times and still put up 45 points, and they had 7 penalties. How much of that is just week one jitters, and how much of that is maybe just they're not as disciplined? That's going to be interesting to see. I think it's worth having in the back of your mind that, hey, this might be a team that you can draw penalties on. The defense, 2 interceptions against Central Michigan. I think Caleb Evans, especially, they should be looking. They may have opportunities there.
They had a chance at 4 total.
Yeah. So I want to see out of Missouri. I want to see, one, can the offensive line, can they perform how they did? We talked a little bit before this how the offensive line started off pretty shaky, and a lot of that had to do with the play calling. They were the slow developing type of plays, and they changed the play calling scheme, and they had more plays where it was just set, hike, boom, hitting the hole, and the offensive line made those holes, and that's why Tyler Beatty had 200 yards rushing.
Yeah, it definitely was a stark contrast between the first and second half on the way the plays were developing. I also think that kind of plays into what we were talking about a minute ago with how many players were playing. There were something like 21 different guys on offense. And I think some of that is Drinkwitz trying to find out who he wants to use where and how he wants to use them. Uh, like Mookie Cooper, for one, was utilizing a lot of jet sweeps and stuff, didn't really have any downfield routes. I look to see that change next week and see him get more downfield routes. And some of that may have been he had a lingering leg injury, so I don't know how much that affected his game and the play calls too. So it will be interesting to see how the offensive play calling is changed for Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm eager to see Dominic Lovett get involved. He was targeted twice that I can think of against Central Michigan. I'd like to see him with the ball in his hands, especially if he can get some space down the field. I think that could be very exciting to see. Yeah, so David, it's prediction time here. We both did pretty well last week. Looking at this game against Kentucky, we've looked at a couple of different lines from Vegas. You saw one that had Kentucky as a 3.5-point favorite, at least they opened that way. ESPN, whatever they use, says Kentucky by 5. As for my pick, I think this is a game that if it were later in the season, I'd be very confident. With it being week 2, I'm not as confident. It's primetime game, first conference game for Kentucky, not to mention September 11th, any emotions that go in with that. I think a young Mizzou team not quite ready for this. I am going to go ahead and say Kentucky wins and covers 34-23.
So for my prediction, I am going to stick with what I did preseason and have a Mizzou win here at 35-28. And the reason why is I'm looking at a clean sheet again for Missouri. If they play like they did against Central Michigan, force some turnovers, stay out of the penalty yardage situations. Kentucky had a couple of turnovers. They had 7 penalties, you said. If Mizzou can play a clean game, I really think they can take advantage of that. The other key I'm looking for is how well Bazelak can throw the ball further than 20 yards. If he can get a couple of deep passes, which were there, he just missed in the first game, and some of that might be knocking off the rust and getting at the game speed. If he can make some connections there, it's really going to open up our offense, and we become a much more dangerous team. So I am still going to stay 35-28, but with everything you were talking about with the atmosphere, it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be a battle. So I really think this will define our season. So it's one to keep an eye on. Anyway, that's all we have for our prediction this week for Under the Arc Sports. Thank you for watching.